welcome to another Spectrum Economics video. Today I'm going to be touching on social impact evaluation again, but focusing on one particular area, and that is the interaction or the integration between social impact evaluation and cost-benefit analysis. So what is the relationship between these two and how do they feed off each other? Alright, so before I jump into any of that, I'm going to just give you a quick introduction to what I want to cover in this video. So I'm going to provide a brief introduction to what cost-benefit analysis is, for those of you that may not be aware or may not have seen some of my other videos. I'm also going to briefly introduce social impact evaluation as well, so you understand what I mean by social impact evaluation, and then I can explain the connection to cost-benefit analysis, which then I'd explain after that. Also want to have a quick look as well in terms of social impact evaluation, how it links to risks and also benefit management as well. Less of a focus on that though, mostly focused around cost-benefit analysis and the link with that and how the two actually complement each other. Alright, so where does cost-benefit analysis and social impact evaluation fit in? So generally, it relates to investment normally, and it could be infrastructure, it could be non-infrastructure. And in order to get funding for an investment, you generally have to have what is called a business case, or something along those lines, which outlines your proposal, which basically contains all the necessary details for people to make decisions about this project and whether this project should be funded, and also where this funding should come from, and a number of other different areas. So cost-benefit analysis and social impact evaluation fit into the business case, and actually quite a critical part of the business case in terms of justifying a project, and also in terms of looking at in terms of the best use of resources. So you could have a number of options, for example, and a cost-benefit analysis and social impact evaluation would help you find the best option when you compare the different costs and benefits and impacts of these options as well. Whether you're monetizing them, quantifying them in some other way, or whether it's just qualitative statements, but it's more information to help decision makers make better decisions, how money should be invested. And generally this is used for government, but it can also be used in the private sector as well. But today what I'm looking at is mostly focusing on in terms of how government expenditure would be used using these two concepts. Okay, so what is cost-benefit analysis? I've got a very simple definition out of the textbook, Campbell and Brown. So basically, cost-benefit analysis, or social cost-benefit analysis, is a process of identifying, measuring and comparing social benefits and costs of an investment, project or program. Yeah, sorry, it doesn't actually have to be just a project, it could be a number of different projects pulled together within a program of works, and then the results of these projects can be compared using cost-benefit analysis, as well as the overall results of the program. So what about SIE? So what is that? Social impact evaluation. So I've broken it down into 3 steps really, and that involves, first off, identifying your social impacts, which looks at identifying what we call the baseline or the base case, which is a yardstick, and then identifying the impacts of a particular project. So just identification straight up. Once that's been done, you need to determine whether they're being quantified or monetized and so on, and that will determine whether they are actually input into what we call impact risk assessment, which is generally a 5x5 matrix, looking at probability and consequences to determine basically if these impacts are material. Now once you've done that, you conduct probably a number of enhancement, maybe exercises or mitigation strategies, and so on, to just reaffirm what we've done. You can even have sensitivity testing. But you'd summarize all of that within a report or within a chapter within a business case, and possibly within some other table that I mentioned in a previous video, your appraisal summary table, just a snapshot of what goes into your social impact evaluation. The social impact evaluation, I don't think of it as just an additional analysis or evaluation to be included in a business case. There's a lot of times people think, wow, it's just more red tape, you're just throwing in more and more work to do basically, it just prolongs the whole process. I think what I try to do with social impact evaluation is actually add in something that actually pulls together some of the other things. So you may actually save a bit of time in your cost-benefit analysis by doing a social impact evaluation, because you've identified your impacts, your benefits, your costs to go into that. And also as well, it relates to your risk side of things, because you've got impact risk assessment. Some of those risks can be included as part of your financial analysis. And also as well, benefits realization. You can actually pull a number of positive impacts out of it, which can be included later on as part of your benefit realization. So basically, like I said, it's not a standalone approach. It is designed to actually work with other areas, and cost-benefit analysis in particular. So just a quick look at the relationship between social impact evaluation and cost-benefit analysis. So this is something I covered in another video, but I'll cover very quickly. So imagine you've already determined your social impacts. So you've got to decide now whether these impacts can be monetized or not. And if they can be monetized, how do you go about doing that? So there may be existing material, and that's great. I know that there's some good guidelines out there, transport in particular, and then you can use those guidelines to put a dollar value on, whether it be things relating to travel time, I think operating costs and things like that. If you can't put a dollar value on, there may be other ways of doing that. That's what I call the social returns on investment approach. So that would involve quite a bit more stakeholder engagement, actually to get down and talk to your stakeholders. Social returns on investment is a little bit similar to cost-benefit analysis in the sense you're trying to put values on things, but ideally we want to try and combine the two concepts of cost-benefit analysis and social returns on investment into just one, which is cost-benefit analysis. And I think that can be done, but whatever the case is, when you're trying to put a dollar value on it, it still needs to be well sourced. It still needs to be well referenced, so we know where those dollar values are coming from. And also, as well, you may want to apply more sensitivity analysis to some of these values that you've achieved, because they could be more spurious than some of the stuff that's been more well researched. So for impacts that can't have a dollar value on, we need to determine their materiality, and that's why I mentioned about social impact risk assessment. I'm not going to cover that today, but use the 5x5 matrix to determine the probability and the consequence. So if it's considered material, that means it's generally got quite a high probability and the consequence is quite high. So for those types of impacts, they need to be investigated and ideally need to be quantified, even if it's not necessarily monetized. An example I like to use is like reducing the waiting time for an operation, for example, from 6 months down to 2 months. It's very difficult to quantify what those costs of those additional 4 months are in terms of, your suffering, in terms of risk of death, in terms of loss of income because you have sick days and all of that stuff. But you can simply state you've got a reduction of 4 months in waiting time. And this could be through any initiative, whether it's you're building more hospitals, getting more doctors, or what I like to look at is prevention. Or alternative medicine, where you may not necessarily need the hospitals, and these people can be treated with alternative medicine. Any of these things to reduce the waiting time. And again, even if you got alternative medicine, interesting enough, you'd probably want to put a value in terms of the people being treated through that method as well. For impacts that are not material, just a very simple qualitative explanation would probably suffice, but it's still worth mentioning them and also including them. Alright, so what about the linkages now between cost-benefit analysis and social impact evaluation? So you can see here, we've got the 3 areas: impact, social impacts, and a bit of a description. Impact risk assessment, description, and summary of results. And all the circled areas, so you've got the blue circled areas, so that's where you would do social impact evaluation and cost-benefit analysis together. Like for example, your social impact baseline. You would establish that along with your base case, so you'd have the two consistent, so you'd work those together. The same with identification of benefits and impacts and costs. Again, you would do those together. And around the black circles, I think I've got 2 of those. So in terms of identifying impacts for monetization, that comes under social impact evaluation. You identify those and then they go into the cost-benefit analysis. So that's where it feeds in. And I've got another black circle there in regards to results. So that is identifying metrics for quantifying social impacts. So for those, you may have reached a point where certain impacts have been identified to be material, to be very of high consequence, whether they're positive or negative. It comes to the point where you need to put a dollar value on, whether you're using methods such as contingent valuation, stated preference surveys, or even revealed preference. So that's where you put some work, and that would then transfer over to the cost-benefit analysis. And your economists would probably do quite a bit of work on that. So that covers off on the black. I've still got a few more blue circles in there. Like for example, sensitivity analysis. I'll move to the last one. So that is, you have it in social impact evaluation and cost-benefit analysis. Cost-benefit analysis, you may change some assumptions, and that's going to change some of the dollar values that are in there. The same thing, you can have those same assumptions apply to your social impact evaluation. So for example, we talk about population growth. An increase higher population growth will probably produce higher benefits generally, as your base case, the infrastructure and base case is unable to deal with that extra growth, whereas your project case is probably more suited to actually deal with it a little bit better. So you'd see higher dollar figures within your cost benefit analysis. But ideally you need to apply those same assumptions in your sensitivity test to your social impact evaluation as well. So even if you just have some qualitative statements about what this possibly higher growth rate could actually mean for your impacts. So you get a situation where your benefits are probably going to be higher with higher growth rates, but your costs potentially could also be higher as well. So the overall result is difficult to know, but it's good to keep documented and good to keep it consistent. So as you can see, just looking back at this table, most of the steps within social impact evaluation either has to be done with cost benefit analysis or leading into cost benefit analysis. I can even actually mention one more, I can add an extra circle, and that's in terms of appraisal summary table. The cost benefit analysis actually feeds into that, because you get the results out of the cost benefit analysis, the dollar values, and put that in a table with the values, potentially quantitative values pulled out of the social impact evaluation, as well as some of the qualitative statements. You have that all within one. So that is a bit of the cost benefit analysis feeding back in again. So how can social impact evaluation enhance a cost benefit analysis? Well, first of all, you've got to think that you're now looking at a much wider scope, aren't you, in terms of impacts, in terms of benefits. So often cost benefit analysis is very much focused on what has already been determined, what's already within the guidelines, whereas social impact evaluation can actually pull a lot further, and you're actually getting more involved with the community, and you get more involvement out of the community, and all of that input from the community can actually feed into the cost benefit analysis, and you'll get additional benefits and costs that can actually be monetized. So it could give you a better benefit cost ratio, it could give you a lower, depending on whether these impacts are negative and positive, and also depending on whether they can be converted to dollars. Sometimes it can, sometimes it can't. But interestingly enough, you should probably have a higher quality and more detailed cost benefit analysis. And this is particularly important if we're looking at very expensive projects, high capital projects, where we need to get it right if we're talking about billions of dollars, and programs as well. In fact, programs is probably even better for social impact evaluation, because then you can create that consistency and you can have that much broader baseline that covers off all of the projects within the program, and it can feed into each project. So I think that's a good move if you're talking about program evaluation. All right, so I've come to the end of this presentation. Just to sum it up, really, social impact evaluation, yes, it is another analysis, it's another evaluation, but it shouldn't be treated in isolation like a lot of things get treated in isolation. This should be considered as like an integrating analysis, evaluation, pulling together some of your stuff in relation to cost-benefit analysis, the financial analysis, what are your cost of mitigation strategies, benefits realization, what are your positive impacts that that are going to be going forward and can involve monitoring. All of that feeds into that, and there's very little actually outside of all that that's part of social impact evaluation. So it's kind of the gel holding it all together, and because we've got that, we can now produce a higher quality output. You produce a better business case, a better cost benefit analysis, a more informed financial analysis, and if you're doing benefits realization, you have more benefits to be aware of. So you get that additional quality, and at the same time, I don't think there'll be that much more work. There'd be more work because you're doing another process, social impact evaluation, but you should have time savings in some of your other areas as well. And also I think there'd be better coordination between the other forms of analysis too, so making it easier, I think, for people to understand how everything fits in, and you end up with a much better business case. Alright, so that's my conclusion. That takes us to the end of this video. If you like this video, just give me a like. If you want to see more videos like this, I think I have one more social impact evaluation video. I might come out with some more later on as well. So hit the subscribe button. And I've also got a number of cost-benefit analysis videos, introductory stuff to economics. I've got vegan economics, something I'll talk about another time, that's something I'm quite interested in. Game theory is another one. I've got a few videos on that. So like I said, if you're interested in all of that stuff, please remember to subscribe, and hopefully I'll be seeing more of you. Thank you very much.